can officially get started. So this will be the point that we start the sort of the posting. So good
Okay.
afternoon. Thank you for joining us for our OCPC Housing Roundtable on ADUs. My name is Jason DeRozier. I'm the Senior Planner for Housing and Public Engagement at Old Colony Planning Council. Our first session we had about a month ago. We were joined by Claire Morehouse, the ADU coordinator at the state's Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, who talked about the ADU legislation that was established as part of the 2024 Affordable Homes Act. Today, we are joined by Buzz, and if I mispronounce the name, please feel free to correct me as you're introducing yourselves. I'm always bound to at least mispronounce one name in these sessions, but Buzz Artiano, from Buildex, who will be providing an overview of construction and design approaches that make ADUs feasible. John Wells from Cape Cod 5 Bank, and Daniel Horgan from Northeastern Savings Bank, who will be talking about financing options that make ADUs open and available to homeowners. And then Spencer Dancause, town planner from the town of Plymouth, who will be really talking about an overview of how it works at the implementation level, as well as maybe some lessons learned from Plymouth. Plymouth is one of the towns, or the town in the OCPC region that has the most applications for ADU. So it'd be really exciting to hear from Spencer about how that's going at the on the ground at the community level. And then there'll be time at the end for Q&A for anyone who's joining us who has questions for anyone, and then we will close promptly at 2. So Buzz, starting with you.
Hi. So Spencer, I've never got to see you in person. Nice to see
Hi,
you. We've
nice to see you as
obviously,
well.
obviously talked on the phone many times.
Hmm.
Uh, and I will say, starting out, of all the towns that I work in, Plymouth has the most organized ADU process, if you will, from zoning all the way through building. So hats off to the town in that regard.
Thank
Uh,
you.
yeah. I sent a request to share. Hopefully it went through.
Yep, I
Yeah.
accepted that, so you should be able to share.
All right. So ADUs, what are they? I think everyone's a little familiar, but essentially it's a small house that you can build in your backyard. Um, it has been extremely, we just to give you the context, we receive about 40 to 60 leads per week um, for an accessory dwelling units just in our market, which is Weymouth to Falmouth and out to Route 24. So um, big interest. The number one question people have on an ADU is what does it cost to build? The pricing, the biggest variable on any site work or any ADU, excuse me, is the site work. So the septic in Plymouth, most of Plymouth does not have municipal sewer. And that is the biggest wild card, figuring out, how to make the septic work, what makes the most sense. And then obviously some of Plymouth is very hilly, so you have retaining walls and other things that have to happen. But the typical ranges of pricing are about 280,000 to 390,000. That's for a complete house, site work and everything. We do have our pricing live now on our website. So if anyone wants to check out our website, they can go to our website and see active pricing. It is updated on a monthly basis. And again, the biggest variable cost is anticipating is the site work and utility connections. There are lots of banks that are coming out with financing options now for ADUs, tons, and more coming on every day. And there are many options for people that want to do it. There's also what's called the home modification loan program that can be applied to your ADU. If it's someone in your family, you're building this ADU for someone that has some type of disability, you can get up to a $50,000 interest-free, no payment loan for the additional work that you need to do the ADU to accommodate that person with a disability. Everyone obviously knows this, but ADUs are now allowed by right in Massachusetts. The key term here, and Spencer maybe want to jump in on this, but is gross floor area. That is the term. It's not square footage. I know a lot of people say,
Right.
but it's not square footage. It's gross floor area. And it's 50% of the gross floor area of the primary residence. So, apologize for that. Um, and that's a key term that you need to pay attention to. And then again, the process does vary by town. We do manage it all, and we can do a free site evaluation for anyone that would like one at any time. We do it by Zoom. Um, Utilities is a big question. Should they be separate or shared? They can be either or a combination of all. I encourage all my clients to do separate utilities just for future proofing of the unit. So at some point, maybe they're building it for a family member now, but someday they might want to rent it. And obviously, it's more convenient when a tenant's in there to have that as a separate bill, so that you don't have to try to unwind who pays for what, right? And then lastly, why build X? We have a very tight timeline, and we guarantee a 100-day build from the day we're digging. Permits can be anywhere from 2 to 4 months. And that's it for me. I'm happy to answer any questions from anyone.
Great, thank you. And I did just put in the chat for everyone if there's any questions that folks attendees have for any of the panelists. If they put those into the Q&A function on the bottom, I will moderate the Q&A portion towards the end of the session. So feel free to put those questions in as they come up. So next is John and Daniel, being sort of the bankers here. However you want to sort of approach that, feel free to take that away.
Do you want me to just go first, Dan, and then you can
Yeah,
talk about your programs? Okay.
absolutely.
So we offer three different ways of financing an ADU. The two most cost-effective ways would be to do it as an equity line or an equity loan. And if somebody wanted to do it as a home equity credit line, it would just be, the standard way that you would get a home equity line. You wouldn't be specific to an ADU unit or anything. We can lend up to a maximum of 80% of the appraised value. We can also do automated valuation models, which might alleviate the necessity for an appraisal. With any HELOC loan, the rate is tied to prime. Ours would either be prime or prime plus a quarter, depending upon whether you want all electronic statements. And it's just based on the current value of the home, so it doesn't take into effect or into consideration the value upon completion of the ADU. The other equity option would be an equity loan, which would be a fixed rate. As a HELOC, the rate fluctuates monthly as a function of the prime rate. But with a HE loan, you actually get a fixed rate. Currently, we're at 7.25% on that, and it's for a 15-year term. It is fully funded at closing. There are no closing costs for either a HELOC or a HE loan. So it really just depends on whether somebody wants the flexibility of a line of credit that they can write checks against, pay back, and continue to do that for 10 years, or if they just want a fixed rate and a fixed payment for 15 years. The maximum loan amount you could get for a HELOC is $400,000. The maximum loan amount you could get for a home equity loan would be $250,000. And if for some reason either of those programs weren't going to accommodate the projects, such as like maybe the loan amount that you need isn't how much we can lend isn't enough to cover how much it's going to cost you or how much you're looking to borrow, or maybe you don't have enough equity in the property as is, then the third option would be for us to look at it as a construction loan, in which case we would get a copy of the plans and specifications, builder's license, insurance, all that, just like a typical construction loan. And we would base the loan to value on the completed value of the property. So when the ADU is done, all said and done, what's the final value of the property? So it gives people potentially access to more money to borrow if the HELOC or HE loan can't accommodate what they're looking for. And that's pretty much it. The three different ways to do it. If you do it as a construction loan, it's a first mortgage, so it would take out any existing first mortgage. we'd have to pay that off. And if you had a second mortgage, we'd have to pay that off as well. And there are, full closing costs associated with it. And you can have a 30-year term with a construction loan. So the reason why you wouldn't want to do it that way is it's more costly. Um, but if the other two options don't work for you, then it's a great fallback position. Um,
Can I ask a question?
yeah, sure.
So what is the typical closing cost for the first option, the HELOC? What does that typically cost a consumer?
So there's no closing costs for a HELOC or the HE loan. There are none. With a HELOC, we have if for some reason somebody were to close out the line within 24 months or the first 2 years, then there'd be a $400 early termination fee that they'd have to pay when they close out the line. If they keep it open, even with a zero balance, more than 2 years, they don't pay anything up front and they never pay anything when they close the line. Same thing with the HE loan. There are no costs at all for as a
Can I
second
ask
position.
you a scenario then?
Yeah.
So mom has a house and it's paid off and it's worth $700,000,
Hmm.
and she wants to build an ADU in Sally's backyard or daughter's backyard.
Hmm.
Mom can go get a HELOC on her existing house, use that money to build the ADU, sell her house, and pay off the HELOC, and only incurs a $400 fee.
Correct.
Wow, that's great.
And only if that happens within the 2 years of her taking out the line. So,
And then Buzz, if I could just add, excuse me. So our programs are largely the same. So the HELOC, similar to what John described, no closing costs, and I think our fee, early prepayment termination fee, it's $500. So it's very similar.
So that is definitely the least expensive path for someone to get money to build an ADU.
absolutely. As far as Cape Cod 5 is concerned, yes.
Right. Yep. Same for Northeastern Savings Bank. And I was wondering if I could just expand. John, you stole 95% of my thunder, which I kind of expected.
I'm sorry.
No, that's quite all right. Northeastern Savings Bank does have a couple of variations. So yes, we have the HELOC and the fixed equity up to 80%. However, we will also allow up to 80% of as completed. If we're using as completed, it'll look and feel a little bit more like a first mortgage construction. We'll have two different draws, and then inspections, and then it gets finalized. And we also go up to 30 years on the fixed equity, just to give consumers a little bit more payment relief there. But other than that, we similar to Cape Cod 5, we offer the first mortgage construction, but in conversations with many consumers, very few are unwilling to give up their very low first mortgage interest rates. So therefore, that's why they're gravitating more towards the equity products.
One other thing I want to add to, Dan, if you don't mind, is so for the HE loan, which would be the fixed rate home equity loan, ours is maxed out at 15-year term, but that actually can go in either second position or third position. So if somebody has a first mortgage with a low interest rate and they want to keep that, then this would be the way to go, as long as they can fit the guidelines and get, qualify for as much of a loan amount as they need. And if they have a first and a second, we could go in the third position behind those two, but only on that equity loan, the fixed 15-year equity loan. Everything else, for a HELOC, we can go in second position, and for the construction loan, it has to be first position.
Interesting. Can I ask another question?
Sure.
So on that, my first scenario, mom is selling a house and Mary is letting her build in the backyard. If mom doesn't have enough equity, Mary could also take a home equity line of credit on her property, and they could combine those funds to build the ADU and then pay most of it off when mom sells her house.
Right, because the equity line for our program, I mean, it's not tied, it's not specific to an ADU. It's just basically
They
you just
can
borrow
literally use it. They can use it
for
for
anything.
whatever they like.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting.
same with ours. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That's a great program.
Great. Anything else from our banking partners before I pass it over to Spencer?
If not specifically for me, so it might be interesting if there's more Q&A. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Spencer?
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Spencer Dancause. I work for the town of Plymouth. I'll preface this by saying most of my experience with ADUs has been from the building department end. So I was their zoning inspector for the past 4 years. I've just come to the planning department. So I appreciate the compliment, Buzz, on how we've been handling it, because it's definitely been a team effort just to make sense of all the regulations coming into effect here and the coming guidance from the state on things such as the Title V, the addressing, different use case scenarios that people have with ADUs. Because when I first started with the town, it was a prohibited use. So every time someone asked to build, an accessory apartment on the property, the answer was no. You had to be the bad guy, tell them no. The only alternative was a family suite within the existing home. So it's now nice to see that people are being able to expand the use of their own properties. They can put in the accessory dwelling unit, whether it's attached or detached or within the home. So it's great to see. In as far as implementation of the ADUs in Plymouth, the local ADU bylaw, because Plymouth has a Plymouth ADU bylaw and a zoning bylaw, as well as the state's protected use ADU, which are separate. They run in parallel to each other. So the Plymouth ADU bylaw was just adopted at the Springtown meeting in 2023. It took effect in 2024. About 6 months before the state ADU bylaw took effect. So initially, the local ADU bylaw it did not pass the town meetings in 2019 and 2021. There was some pushback on questions about the density. There was a lot of concern about them being used as short-term rentals. Finally, 2023, it did pass that town meeting. And to implement that, the course is you start with the concept, you draft your ADU bylaw, you need to have your local board approval, you need your planning board, you need your select board approval, then it can go to the town meeting for approval. Once that's approved, then it can be moved on to the Attorney General's office. They can review that. It can be a bit of a waiting time until it's finally adopted and effective in the town. So it was a long stretch to have that ADU bylaw passed when it was first introduced in 2019. Didn't take effect until 2024. But now that it is in effect, we've seen a lot of people making use of it. So I have some numbers from August of 2024 to present. We've received 61 zoning permit applications for ADUs, which in Plymouth, it's a prerequisite to have a zoning permit approval before you can file for your building permit and have that approved. 44 building permit applications have been received since August of 2024. So that means we've had almost 3/4 of the applicants for zoning permits move on to a building permit. So that's a pretty high success rate of people who want to build these ADUs. We're all for it. There's a small amount of applicants who are either not moving forward with the building permit, or a very small amount of people who have particular cases where maybe they can't fit it on the property. It doesn't, the use is allowed now, so that's not a barrier anymore. And now because we also have the state ADU law in effect from February of 2025, when that took effect, to present, we've had 27 state ADU applications. So there are some minor differences between the Plymouth style accessory dwelling unit. I know Buzz touched on the gross floor area, which is a measurement from the interior walls. So when we talk about your 900 square foot maximum ADU, or 50% of your home's, your principal dwelling's floor area, that's coming down to the interior wall dimensions, not so much the overall mass of the structure. When we look at the Plymouth ADU, there is a restriction on short-term rental use. That's a prohibited use, but with the state's ADU, you are allowed to have short-term rental use. And the state essentially leaves some room for the town to either prohibit it or allow it. So they have some minor differences. I'd say the Plymouth ADU is almost as equally as effective as the state ADU and making it possible for people to put these on their properties. We're actually taking a look at how the Plymouth ADU, the state ADU, and even our family suite bylaws can be clarified further, just to make them more aligned with each other. But from recent applications that I was processing, I think most people are going for the state protected use ADU. There are some more lenient requirements as far as dimensional intensity goes when you talk about setbacks, especially when it comes down to people who have pre-existing non-conforming properties, since a lot of the properties in Plymouth are undersized or they have a smaller dwelling that's much closer to a property line that wouldn't be allowed nowadays. As far as implementation lessons, I think the barrier that people run into most is the financial cost. Our health department has actually created a flow chart just to navigate all the different kind of scenarios people can run into when they look at wanting to put an accessory dwelling unit on the property, whether that's detached or attached or within the home. So, if you have a cesspit on your property and you want to add an ADU that's detached from the home, you might face costs with bringing your existing home's septic up to par. So the health department's flow chart kind of navigates that issue there. Additionally, another challenge was how do we address the accessory dwelling units? So the state's ADU law took effect prior to state guidance coming out, providing information or guidelines on how to address the accessory dwelling units for 911 and the postal service, or even for the census. So we had to come up with a standard. In Plymouth, we've been assigning the accessory dwelling units as a U on the property. So if you're a 90 in your street name, we would add a 90 U for the accessory dwelling unit. And that was a decision that had to be made prior to the state's guidance. So it's difficult to always align your town with the state when the guidance is coming out after the fact. But for the most part, if you're looking to build an ADU, you start with your zoning permit. You figure out your situation with your septic system, or if you're on town sewer, that solves a lot of issues for you, especially when it comes to bedroom counts. Once you have that zoning permit approval, you're moving on to a building permit application with your architectural designs, meet the building code requirements. Once you have the building permit approved, then you can go ahead and construct that accessory dwelling unit. Granted, you have your health department approvals, water, sewer approvals, fire department approvals. So Plymouth is very encouraging for residents to build ADUs. There haven't been a lot of situations where we're telling people, no, you can't build them. It's actually enabled a lot of homeowners to bring their properties into conformity if they have these pre-existing non-conforming properties. There is actually a use case I just wanted to mention. So there was, in Plymouth, we do have certain properties that have more than one principal dwelling unit on the property. In Plymouth, that's what we call a non-conforming use. So currently you can only have one principal dwelling unit on a property. But if you have these old properties, maybe from the 50s that had a couple cottages on them, nowadays, if you were to expand or alter one of those cottages, you trigger a special permit from our zoning board of appeals. So what the accessory dwelling unit law has done is allowed people to potentially convert one of those cottages to an allowed use accessory dwelling unit. Granted, you meet the dimensional requirements for that ADU, and that brings the property into more conformity, which negates the requirement for a special permit to alter the primary dwelling. So as we move on, there's all kinds of different use cases that we're coming across, different uses for the ADUs that we didn't really foresee when it first came about. And that was another one of the challenges. It's just so many situations you didn't anticipate arising, and trying to align with the state's regulations as closely as possible when things are in this first year. They seem to be changing quite often. So it's been a bumpy ride, but overall very successful.
I'd like to just chime in there for a minute. So Spencer,
Yeah.
so I like the U at the end of the address. A lot of towns are doing A and B. I don't think that's a good use case. I like the
Mm,
U. I wish more towns had done that. It's the number one. It's probably after, will it fit on my lot? How much is it going to cost? The third question is usually, what's the address going to be? Uh,
right, right,
so in Plymouth, it's easy to say it's going to end in a U. So if you're at 44 Bartlett Road, you're 44U.
exactly, exactly.
So it was funny too when I was pulling that first permit at 72 Jordan Road. I know it was a while before they could even tell me what the address was because you were working through that, what you were going to use. So I didn't understand what the holdup was, but now I understand it. So
Yeah, it's a lot of collaboration. You check, the fire department, police
yeah,
department, postal service, make sure they're on board with that.
yeah, it's good stuff. One question that comes up a lot, Spencer, in a lot of towns is, the height of the basement in the ADU. So a lot of towns are limiting the height of the basement in the ADU, and I know Plymouth is not. So can you kind of expand on that, what the thought process is in Plymouth versus other towns?
Well, I can speak for when we interpret the state's protected use ADUs. So it does exclude or it does include basements into your gross floor area. I think the important thing is that basement going to be detached from the rest of the home by a separate entrance, um, or is it going to be a fluid part of the accessory dwelling unit? I can't really speak for exact building code requirements, but I think the important thing comes down to is that basement going to be finished or not for livable space. If it's an unfinished basement, to fit within the state's criteria, we try to push them towards make it a garage. If you have a walkout basement garage, you can have your basement with that overhead door, and you can fit within the 900 square foot limit. But if you're building an accessory dwelling unit and you want to have 900 square feet on the first floor with a full basement on the full 900 square foot basement, I think you need to look at making it an unfinished or separate entrance type of
Yeah.
space
So
there.
if you had an internal stairway, you feel that that's going to trigger a problem.
Right, right.
Okay, that's interesting because that's a big talking point in a lot of towns.
Hmm.
I agree with the way Plymouth interprets it, but not all towns agree with that interpretation.
Right, because once you have the accessory dwelling, it's the most uh, you have the most regulation at the time of permitting to make sure it aligns with the state law. Once it's even with in-laws, once it's permitted and done with, who knows if someone's putting up a
Yeah,
door or
yeah,
what have you.
yeah, yeah. So that's another question. So and correct me if I'm wrong. In Plymouth, if I already have an in-law, I can still put an ADU.
Correct, correct. Yes. So if you have an in-law suite on your home, you can also construct an accessory dwelling unit. And the same goes if you want to build both at the same time, they're going to be separate from each other.
Okay, yeah, that's fantastic.
So whether you want to do the ADU attached to the home or detached from the home within the home, the family suite and the ADU run separate.
Very good. Yeah, like I said at the beginning, Plymouth has the best, clearest path and the most organized. It's all online. And you follow the process and you get your permit.
Yeah.
It's pretty straightforward.
What we haven't seen are the multiple ADUs yet. So no, we haven't gotten any applications of anyone trying to build more than one, which is another one of those things. The state requires to have a special permit opportunity for more than one accessory dwelling unit, but no one's applied for it yet. So I'm interested to see how
Yeah,
the boards will view that.
I'm actually in the process of talking to a customer, so I might. Well, I guess I won't be talking to you soon because now you've moved on to planning. But
Always happy to consult with you.
good stuff. Good stuff.
Great, thank you. Before moving on to just general questions, do any of you have any questions for each other or want to keep some parts of the conversation going?
I think just quickly, I'd like to add that. So just having had about 250 Zoom meetings and in-person meetings with customers, a lot of people were concerned about rental in the beginning of the ADU journey, and I can tell you that it's less than 5% of the customers that we speak to.
Okay.
It's all about family members. So 50 to 60% is the parents have a big old house that they don't want anymore and they want to downsize or they want to go back and forth to Florida, and they're going to build a ADU onto one of their child's properties. Or the child is going to buy the primary home because their family's expanded and then build the ADU for the parents. The next 20-ish% is someone in the family has some type of disability or some kind of housing need. They don't want them in some apartment a half hour away or whatever it may be. And then the last 20-ish% is young adults that want a first time home, and they don't want to spend $700,000-800,000. They want to build a nice new house for themselves, on their parents' property, but it's their own house. And especially I just finished one in Plymouth. Actually has a 2-car garage under with a 900 square foot ADU on top. And the person, he's a car guy, so he has his 2 cars parked inside, and he loves it. So those are really the use cases. It's not rental at all. I can tell you that.
Right, right. Yeah, that's what I've seen most. So there's a lot of either aging parents who want a place for their kids to stay. The kids can't afford a single family of their own. So if the parents have a large enough property, they can construct a detached ADU. Maybe the parents will move into the ADU,
Yep.
or maybe vice versa. But that's what I've seen the most. And we're just starting to see more building permit applications come in to construct a new single family with the ADU at the same time. I mean,
Interesting. Yeah.
financially, it makes sense if you already
Yeah.
have the materials and the builders out there
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
build the ADU in conjunction to the single family. But that's what we're starting to see as well. Not just the ADU being built alone.
So that's a question. Is that 2 separate permits at the same time?
That is 2 separate permits. So permitting for the single family and then separate permits for the accessory dwelling unit.
And do you have to have the permit for the house first, then get the ADU permit?
Yes, yes. So you'll need the single family. You can permit them at the very same time, so you can
Right.
have both permits issued the same day.
Okay.
But you do need to have the single family approved first.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that's good stuff. I wasn't aware of that. That's very, very interesting.
So that's a good segue I think, for a question that I had initially around sort of rental income, because in most cases, if a younger couple are building an ADU in the backyard or attached to the primary home that's being designed for an aging parent or maybe a grandparent, in most cases, those, you know, children or grandchildren are not charging rent to their parents and or grandparents. And in many cases, if a parent is building an ADU for their children to be able to move into a place that's their own, they're probably not charging the children rent either. But maybe for John or Dan, if there is a situation in which rental income is a part of the mix, do you include that in the underwriting? And then how does that work?
You want to go first, Dan?
Yeah, certainly. We follow sort of standard industry practices, so we will definitely factor in rental income in addition to other income. And so we do put a cap on that. So we allow the percentage is 75% of that income is used for qualification purposes. But just it's definitely a factor just to try and help all the consumers out to make the financing work.
We would do the same thing, but only for the ADU HELOAN, the one that's the 15-year term and the fixed rate, because a HELOC is really not tied at all to an ADU, and those are only on primary residences or second homes, so there's no rental income considered for that. Same thing with a construction loan. And all we would ask for up front is we could get like a broker's opinion letter to let us know what they think the ADU could rent for, and we'd use 75% of that if they needed that income to qualify.
Right.
Great. In Buzz's presentation, he gave an estimate of a typical cost of an ADU being between 280 and $390,000. And there's a number of folks that I've been speaking with within the OCPC region who might be older senior homeowners, might be of lower income, and that might be somewhat of a I don't know, an exorbitant expense to sort of like take out a loan, or maybe they don't have as much equity or any equity in their home. How can we, in being, I don't know, more visionary and maybe looking forward in the future a little bit, how can we make sure that all homeowners who are interested in sort of like having ADUs as part of their properties are able to, whether or not they have equity, and are able to take on essentially almost a second mortgage in some cases in order to realize that opportunity.
So how to lower the cost, I think is your question.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's many options. Our product is a stick-built product on site. It's not a modular construction. You can save some money going modular. It's a totally different product. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's a different product. And, if you are okay with, kind of that single wide look from a modular company, just a 14-foot wide box by say 45 feet long, 50 feet long, that's probably going to be, on the more affordable side, especially if, you have town sewer, town water, and you don't need a lot of site work. There's not a lot of trees in the way. I think you could get down into the 200s, low 200s, maybe even the high 190s. But there's just a certain amount of intrinsic cost to building an ADU, because if you think about it, it's a small house, so you still have to handle the septic, you still have to handle electrical service, the water service, the bathroom, the kitchen, the heating and cooling system, the plumbing, all that. So no matter how small you get that house, there's just certain minimum costs that have to go into that house. So as you get smaller, the square foot price actually increases dramatically. So I've done the math, and for me, as a company, it makes no sense financially for a customer to build anything less than 500 square feet. Plus someone has to live in it. So
Yeah.
Right.
Let's see. There's something in the chat. Oh, I see. Margaret
yeah,
Core had put in the Town of Plymouth's ADU Title V flow chart.
that's awesome. I wasn't aware of that document. Thank you, Margaret.
Anyone else in terms of like lowering the costs just generally of ADUs, and how we might be able to open up the opportunity for more folks?
I can't, like we can't have any impact on the cost of the unit, obviously, but there are different ways to qualify that, if people are retired and they don't have, traditional income, or they don't have a lot of income, we can create alternative sources of income to help them qualify, like asset-based. So if people have retirement accounts, we can create an income stream off of those without them even needing to take money from them. So that could help somebody to be able to qualify for a more expensive product, even if they don't have like typical employment income or enough income to qualify.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Great. So when the ADU legislation was established, I will say that the state had a ambitious goal of 8 to 10,000 ADUs within a 5-year period. There's been sort of studies done, an article in a recent Boston Globe paper saying that kind of under where I think we need to be as a state regarding ADU development. Do you think we will be where we need to be in 5 years with the 8 to 10,000? What are some of the constraints or maybe challenges that we're experiencing now in the early portions of ADU by right development, and where do you think we can get to using ADUs as one of the tools in our toolbox around the housing crisis, or the need for various housing types?
So I actually just had the Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll on my podcast, and we had this very conversation. And The answer is, I think we'll well exceed that 8 to 10,000 in the 5 years. That I every weekend we have a what we call a home tour, so we're actively at one of our ADU builds and people can come visit. And that the increase of the traffic, the amount of people, families coming every weekend is dramatic since the beginning of the year. As more people understand what an ADU is, how they can use it, what they cost, can they build one, et cetera. So if you extrapolate the numbers from California, so last year they permitted 34,000 ADUs in California. If you do the math of a population basis, it says that there's 4,400 ADUs, buildable, if you will, in Massachusetts a year as far as a need goes. So I think it's just a matter of people understanding that they can do it and then working through the family dynamics. I will tell you that 70% of an ADU build is family dynamics. Who's going to get the mom and the dad, money, all those things, inheritance, and 30% is, what we're going to build.
Anyone else on that question?
I would just add on, when we talk about, some of the financial difficulties and enabling more people to construct those accessory dwelling units, for Plymouth residents, they can always check with the Community Development Office to see if there's any assistance money for upgrading an existing septic system. It's worthwhile is to see if that's a barrier to somebody constructing an accessory dwelling unit, as Title V can be challenging
Yeah, that's a
and
good
costly.
point. Yeah, good point. Yeah, septic is the biggest wild card in this whole ADU journey.
Buzz, you had referenced a podcast where you had the lieutenant governor. Would you be willing to share a link to that so I can include that in sort of the
Oh,
outreach and
absolutely. Yeah,
promotion as
we're
part of this?
waiting. I will. I'm waiting for her team to approve it. It's
Okay,
been filmed. But as soon as it's approved, I will send it to you. Absolutely.
awesome. Thank you. And then I guess, sort of like wrapping this up in terms of questions. Um, if there are any homeowners who might be what I'll refer to as ADU curious in terms of thinking about this as an opportunity for them, for their family members, maybe to generate some rental income for themselves, what advice would you have for them as they sort of embark on this journey?
I guess I would say just from a practical standpoint, they have to get a good idea as to what it's going to cost them to build it, how much they can expect to get in rental income, and how much that would offset the mortgage payment that they may potentially have as a result of that. So, having a clear understanding at the end of the day, how much they're going to owe every month and how much they can potentially get in rental income, would be important, I think, to make sure that they can make the best decision for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think too, some of the conversations we've had, in addition to that, are ensuring that the consumers really understand or how to navigate the town that they plan on building in,
Mm-hmm.
just to really make sure they understand what all the permitting requirements are, the timing on all that, and all the nuances. Not every town's
Um,
Plymouth.
Right.
Buzz, can I ask you a question? So when people come to you and they say they want to build an ADU, obviously it would be very valuable to know what they can expect to get for value from it. So do you guys deal with that? Like when people ask you what's it going to be worth when it's done, do you have the ability to help them, with that valuation?
So the answer is no. I
Okay.
don't have a magic ball. I wish I did. Uh, Again, 98% of the calls we get is for a family member, and it's not a rental driven decision. It's, you know, my mom, I need to keep an eye on her because she can't drive at night anymore and she lives a half hour away. And I don't have an hour every day to go check on her versus walking in the backyard and making sure she's okay.
Right. This would really be for people that don't have enough equity to pay for it with an equity loan or a line, and they have to do a
Yeah,
first.
I
They have
don't,
to
I
do a
don't
first
think,
mortgage. Then we're going to
yeah,
need to know what the property is going to be worth.
yeah,
And they need to know that up front. I would think to make their decision as to whether or not
yeah,
it's going to work.
yeah, 100%. I think as far as what it's worth once the ADU is built, I think again, my buyers are it's a family member and they're not thinking about, what the rental is. I have seen a few that are for rent and most of them are in the 2,500 to $3,000 range for the 2 bedroom, 900 square feet is what they're renting for. And they go very quickly. You got to remember too, there's quite a bit of empirical evidence on the Cape because the Cape, there was 15 towns on the Cape that had approved, ADU bylaws. They were town dependent, so it was kind of a hodgepodge of regulations. But there's certainly enough empirical data to say this is what these units go rent for people to do that, to get real numbers for an appraiser, so he could get you some real numbers.
Yeah, and I always encourage people to, if they're thinking about an ADU, I would encourage them to check the Massachusetts state website. So mass.gov/ADU will have a plethora of information there. There's a frequently asked questions section. It'll take you to all the regulations, and as well as checking your town's local zoning regulations. So those are the best two places to start to kind of inform yourself before getting into hiring the surveyors, engineers, builders, anything like that.
Yeah, and again, just a little plug, obviously, for Build Expo. But the first thing that we do is we offer a free, what we call a site check meeting. So we get on the customer with a Zoom meeting, and we have a proprietary software that we use, and we can show you how the ADU will fit on your lot in real time, and showing the zoning setbacks. So it's that first question, will it fit? We can answer that pretty accurately.
Great. And then going back to something Dan had mentioned, which I think is an important caveat or maybe context in this overall thing, is depending on the community or the municipality someone lives in will vary in terms of who your initial point of contact is to get sort of like permit and to move that application along. In some cases, it's going to be the planning department. In other cases, it will be the building department or the building commissioner. And so it's really important to make sure that folks are sort of going to the correct department first to sort of like start that contact. And then just lastly, as you all were talking, something I thought about, you know, with us being approximately 10 months into the ADU sort of, I don't know, ecosystem in Massachusetts, a lot of the ADUs, I think, has been mentioned, are for sort of like aging parents or children, and so there's no rental income tied to it. But do you all see that trend moving as sort of new markets open up and having more ADUs developed to sort of help ease the burden on sort of the rental market and the high cost of rents that we're seeing in Massachusetts?
My humble opinion is that that is, it's not financially, it depends on what you're building, obviously, but I think the cost of construction, even something moderately constructed versus what you're going to receive for rent, and also with the factor of having somebody in your backyard that wasn't there before, I think really limits that market. Now, that being said, as the parents pass on, I think a lot of those units will become rentals because the value has already been extracted, if you will, from the property. So I think the rental will be a slow burn and then will become more prevalent over time. But no empirical data to support that.
Yeah, fair enough. So we have approximately 8 minutes left. If anyone has any sort of last words of wisdom or sort of wrap up thoughts, feel free to you know give those. Otherwise, I will everyone will get approximately 7 minutes back in their afternoon.
Yeah, I think my only parting advice to anyone thinking about an ADU is don't wait too long, especially for aging parents. Even if you started today, you're looking at least 9 months to a year before the unit's done. So if you think they're going to need it, don't wait till they need it because we can't just snap the fingers and get
Mhm.
it. 'Cause it does, permitting adds, time, between survey and septic and permitting, you're looking at 2 to 4 to 5 months. So, and then you have to build it. So my advice for anyone thinking about an ADU for a family member is get started.
And I would just encourage people to speak to somebody like Buzz first to get an idea as to what kind of cost they're looking at, because it's much more. I can be much more helpful as far as the numbers go if they have an idea as to what the whole thing's going to cost, and then I can figure out what options are available to them. But if they don't have an idea what the cost is yet, there's really not a lot I can do for them. So.
And the only thing I would add to that is I completely agree with is, you can come to the bank too, just for information, and we're more than likely to send you right back to Buzz. But just, we're familiar with the resources. And so if a consumer comes in and hasn't started at the beginning, we can help them with that.
Yeah. And it always helps. So if you know exactly what you want going into an ADU, when you reach out to town officials or looking to go towards permitting, makes the process that much more smoother. If you know where you want it, what you want, we can guide you in the right direction.
Great. Thank you, everyone. We can wrap up. So thank you all for being available and your interest in sort of providing your thoughts and your wisdom when it comes to ADUs for the session. The session was recorded and will be posted on the housing page of the Old Colony Planning Council's website. If you're not anyone watching this or who's joining us live, if you're not subscribed to our newsletter, and would like to pass this webinar along to anyone who was not able to attend, notification of its posting will be on our newsletter sent through email. So that can be found on our website. Thank you again. Hope you all have a great and wonderful holiday season, end of year, and I'm sure everyone's work will continue to pick up in the new year with this and other things. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for hosting, and thank you, Dan and Spencer and John. It was good to meet you, and
Thank you for having us.
hopefully we'll see you again soon.
All right.
Absolutely. Thank
Take
you.
care.
All right, you all take care.